Hey, kia ora, team. Thank you for joining me live. I'm sure a few more people will jump in as we go along. So we'll get started and we'll join those people in as they come. But this is being recorded, so it will be sent out to everyone who registered, as well as those who are joining in live. So hopefully you guys can see my screen and hopefully see my face. But please, yeah, use the chat and let me know if anything isn't working as it should. You should see a Get Race Ready with Sparkle Fitness screen. So if anything freezes or the sound goes a bit funny, just go back out and join back in, and hopefully that will fix everything. If not, just pop something in and let me know. As I said, welcome. No mai haere mai. This is a masterclass for those of you who are doing the Wellington Marathon, the half or the 10K. Even if you're not doing that event, it is geared at those winter marathon events. So you'll find something useful in there. But I will talk through some of the specifics about the Wellington event as well. Is anyone here doing the event for the first time? Pop that in the chat if you are. We will talk about some of the course logistics, but also some of the changes that are happening this year as well. And also pop in the chat whether you're doing the marathon, the half marathon, or the 10K. We're going to talk a little bit more about the taper, some fueling strategies today, and the race day logistics so that you can turn up feeling race ready and ready to go, not second guessing any of your training. So with that in mind, let's get started. So for those who don't know me, kia ora, I'm Sierra. I'm Sparkle Fitness and I'm a running and triathlon coach based here in Wellington. I used to be a lawyer, but when we had the COVID pandemic, I retrained as a personal trainer and coach. I've had quite a good running and Ironman career, gaining some world champion spots and national titles as well. I also have a speciality in training women and training mums and helping them return to running after having a baby. Last year, I was also fortunate enough to be named Exercise New Zealand's personal trainer for 2025, and my studio was also a finalist 2 years in a row in the studio category. Down the bottom there, you can also see some of the other qualifications that I hold. I'll also talk through some extra bonuses that you'll have for registering and for joining. We'll go through with that, what those are at the end. If you want to take a screenshot or take a photo of this and book in a call now, I'm offering free 15-minute coaching calls. And that slide will also be up at the end. And this will either give you a chance to talk through some of the things that we go through today and maybe some more specific stuff for you and your event and how your own training has been going. And if you're interested, I can give you some further information about what I can do as a coach. But our first topic is going to be tapering 101, as in what is a taper? Why should we be tapering? Is it worth doing? And basically the answer is yes. So a taper is when you reduce the training load, and that can be both the volume and intensity. But often when you should do this is very individual. And when you start doing it, it can feel like, am I losing fitness? Maybe you feel worse than when you were doing all the training. You can question whether you should do another long run, whether you should change what you're eating, and the things that you're feeling, are they normal or not? So part of my job today and as a coach is letting you know that when you enter the taper, it's very much not about building fitness anymore. All that work has been done, but it's about saving you from doing things that may be described as self-sabotage or end up hurting you more than helping you. So, how training or tapering works when you're training. The reason why you want to do it is because it's about recovery and adaptation. So, when you reduce your training load, your body has a chance to repair muscle damage, replenish your glycogen stores, and reduce inflammation. And this is basically giving your body a chance to adapt and become stronger. You may have heard it simply or more simply described as when you train, you break down your muscles slightly every time, then you rest and they grow back stronger. But if you don't give them a chance to grow back stronger, then you're just slowly wearing them down. And that's often when you head into the injury territory. The second reason as to why you should taper is because fresh legs equals better performance on event day. Training causes fatigue. I'm sure we all know that if you're following a training plan, and we'll have waves of feeling good and feeling tired, especially as you're entering the more pointy end of your training programs. So tapering clears out that fatigue so that your muscles feel lighter, faster, and more responsive rather than that heavy, tired feeling. This is essential for race day. And there's also some great evidence out there to suggest that you can have anywhere between a 1 to 6% improvement in your performance simply by tapering and not just training through, and then trying to do something impressive on event day without having that rest beforehand. This is all, of course, going to be subject to what your goals are, how hard you're training in the first place, whether you're going for a specific time goal. Those of you who are more aiming to complete and finish, you might not need as big a taper. You also might not need as big a taper when you are training for a 10K versus a marathon. The other thing is that more experienced athletes generally know their bodies a bit better and know what load they can handle. So they tend to need less taper, or rather they just know what works for them a bit better. So it is an art rather than a science. The other reason, though, why you should taper is it is about mental reset. Less training means you have more time to mentally prepare for your event. Visualizing your race, planning logistics, and building confidence in what you're going to do are just as important as your physical readiness. And then finally, it doesn't reverse your fitness. So reducing your mileage for those 1 to 3 weeks, depending on your distance, won't cause you to lose fitness. What we can then see here through this crude graph that I have done is that as your training load reduces over time through the taper, you become more rested, so your ability to perform increases. And then there is that nice little sweet spot where they overlap. But of course, if you do rest and too much and taper too much, then you will start to lose fitness. But that's not really going to happen in that short period. But it is important to know, as I said, it's a balance, it's an art rather than a science. And for most people, maybe a taper of around 10 to 14 days is going to be ideal. But Again, that will depend on the distance that you are doing. Beginner marathoners, I would say more 3 weeks for your last long run. 10Ks, you might be more around that 10 or 8 day, 7 day, 1 week type of taper window. And again, the harder you're planning on racing, the more rested you want to be before that event actually occurs. The other thing about tapering and the questions that I get asked a lot is about nutrition, especially those training for marathon will have quite a high calorie output or expenditure. And then if you start reducing your load and reducing the volume, you may wonder, well, what do I do with what I eat? You don't want to drastically cut your calories just because you're training less. Again, those up to 3 weeks are not going to really make you put on a lot of weight unless you're really going to start eating a lot more. So just like you don't need to cut calories, you also don't need to increase that much either. Your body is, though, still working hard to repair and replenish. So we do want to focus on healthy eating, nutrient-dense foods, and staying hydrated. In the final days before the race, say that 3 day mark, you do want to up the calorie intake slightly to top up your glycogen stores, especially those for the marathon. You might also find you want to start sipping some electrolyte drink 2 to 3 out, particularly if you sweat heavily or are prone to cramping. And did you know that studies show that preloading with sodium improves fluid retention and endurance? Again, this is something that will work for some people and maybe not others. So if you take away anything from today, it's that you need to be practicing this stuff now in your long runs. This is not something that you save and do the night before the race or on race day itself. You need to test these things to see if they do actually work for you, whether the food sits well in your stomach, etc., how much you can eat and drink and still feel like you go okay. The other thing about why I say 3 days to start increasing your carbohydrate intake, you may have heard the term carbo loading before. We don't really do that like the night before, just have this big pasta meal anymore. It is just a slight increase and also skewing your food on a plate so that you have a greater proportion of your meal is then carbohydrate rather than necessarily volume. So if we then go into try to summarize some tapering do's and don'ts, I wanted to give you hopefully some short takeaways so that either you take a screenshot or some quick little points to remember. So we want to stick to our usual routine as much as we can. Yes, we're reducing the volume. We're not necessarily reducing the intensity in terms of taking out speed work totally. For those of you who are doing speed work in your program, you will still have a bit in there, but again, the load will just begin to reduce maybe 20% each week. But trust the process. When you need to rest, when you need to reduce, follow the program. It is always better to be undertrained than it is to be overtrained. Practice your race day nutrition and your gear, like I said now. Don't buy a cute pair of shorts or a top and think that it's going to be your race day outfit and save it for there. Sometimes you just don't know what things are going to chafe. Don't pick a new gel to try on race day either. Again, you don't know if it's going to upset your stomach if it's different than normal. You also want to stay mentally engaged with the process. Yes, we have a bit more downtime and we want a bit of rest, but we want to think about visualizing race day and visualizing how we want to perform, particularly those who do have performance goals. If you're a bit nervous or are always thinking about what if this happens, what if that happens, then you want to visualize, and instead of just worrying about the what ifs, think about the solution. So, what if it rains on race day? The answer is you're going to bring a jacket along. What if I lose a gel on race morning? You're going to have a couple of extras that you can take with you. Um, what if I chafe on my legs or something like that? You are going to practice beforehand on your long runs. And if you feel like you'll chafe in areas, then you'll put a little bit of Vaseline or something on it as a precaution. It never hurts to put a bit of Vaseline on somewhere as a preemptive rather than, not using it and then chafing out. So thinking about the solution to the problem will help those of you who are a bit prone to worrying about all the what ifs. Listen to your body is the most important thing. Just because your plan says one thing doesn't mean you have to strictly follow it. If you're feeling really tired, take a little bit of extra rest, a little bit of a reduction in volume rather than pushing through. Obviously, there's a difference between just normal training tired and overtraining. But if you're finding it hard to get up in the morning, if you're finding that your sleep is disturbed, if you're finding that you're getting irritable, then those are signs that something's out, whether it's the training load or whether it's other life stresses such as work or something in your personal life. But if there is something that is extra stressful in your work situation or your family situation, then you won't be able to train and stress your body out as much as if you didn't have those stresses. So adjust accordingly, pull back again so that you can make it to the start line rather than burning out beforehand. So this might be a bit of a repetition or the opposite of the do's, but don't try to cram in workouts that you've missed. You won't gain anything by doing that now. You will just make yourself more tired. We talked about that overthinking or the panic training. Always err on the side of rest and recovery. Again, we don't want to try new shoes, new socks, new foods. You might see something on Instagram that someone's raving about. I mean, now is the time to try it, but if it doesn't work, find something else. You still have time. Don't save it to race day. If you've got shoes that you like and work for you, it can be a really good idea around about now to buy a new pair if your shoes are getting a bit on the old side. Most of the time, shoes do not need wearing in. You can pretty much pop them on and off you go. But if you buy a different version, then you may find that you blister or something doesn't fit quite right. So stick with your same running shoe unless it's not working, and then try to find an alternative now for it. As we talked about, they're skimping on carbs. We don't really want to start doing that just because our training reduces, but we do want to just match and make sure that we are recovering properly, eating well, especially with winter events. We don't want to get sick because we're stressing our body out through not giving it the proper nutrition that it needs to stay healthy. We also don't want to ignore niggles. So it's better to rest than risk injury. If you're unsure about something, see a physio. But also, it is perfectly normal when you start a taper to become more aware of things in your body and be like, oh, that doesn't feel right. There's a bit of a niggle in my calf. It's very likely just a bit of that angst of not doing your normal routine. But if in doubt about anything, go see a physio and get it sorted before. I should also say, if anyone has any questions, please use the chat as we're going along, and I'll try to remember to to check it as we go for those questions. So the last long run, if you're in the marathon, which I don't think anyone was here. 12Ks and a 10K. So you're probably not quite at the taper time yet. But if you're in the marathon, then now is the time that you'll be thinking of tapering and doing your final long run. What we want to think about is practicing like it's race day now. We're getting into that race specific time for the half marathon and the 10K. So practicing our gear, wearing the exact shoes, socks, and clothing you'll run in, practicing what you're going to eat for breakfast. So try to eat at the same time and try to eat what you'll eat on race day. Now, that can sound a little bit unappealing because for some of you, that can mean getting up super early to do it, especially depending on where you're traveling from to get to the Henry Stadium. You don't have to do that every day or every week, but having that awareness of how much time it's going to take to digest your breakfast, because we do want to eat breakfast before we're doing, especially some of these larger runs, half marathons and marathons. You also want to be practicing using the gels, the drinks, how often and when you are going to take a gel or eat a banana or whatever the food is that you're using. So there are aid stations on course, and they are roughly every 5 or so Ks. Marathoners will have their own special personal nutrition that they can bring to aid stations, and it's really important that if that's you read what you need to do and what bottles and all of that sort of stuff is okay to take in, because there are rules around that. For everyone else, there's water and there's R-Line electrolyte drink at the aid stations. What there is not are gels and sponges and Coca-Cola. So if there's something that you want that is not on offer at the Wellington Marathon, then you are going to need to bring it with you. And it's also going to pay to keep track of the course info on the website and social media if there's any changes to that. So what you may find now is where you might be, if I deal with this question from one of the participants here, JL Jr., you said he's completed 2 half marathons and will be running the Orewa half marathon is on the 14th of June. It's part of preparation. How should you approach it? Should you race it at full effort or treat it as a training run, since my full marathon is only 2 weeks later? That's a really good question. And basically, I would say it depends how hard, like if you've already been doing speed work and race efforts as part of your training program. If this was the first time that you were doing a race effort, then I would say no, just treat it as a normal training run, a nice, easy, long run. But it is actually a good time to do this as a time trial. And you may not choose to do the full race as a time trial, as in the full half marathon, but you can practice maybe doing 15 Ks of it or breaking it up into chunks and running that at your marathon pace. So that way you're not overdoing it too much, but you're getting that race specific practice. And that comes under the pacing note that I've put there. Yeah, you put there. You want to do some of your runs at your goal race pace or simulate your race effort. And another event is a really good way, and it's an easy way of doing that because you're at an event, you have the race atmosphere, you can practice your breakfast in the morning of and all of those sorts of things. But the caution is not to get carried away when you're at another race and go a little bit too hard, because as you say, the full marathon is only 2 weeks later. So what you want to remember is, what is your A race? What is the main race that you are doing? And I'm picking from your question, it's the marathon. So this is a training run, but you can use it as a race specific training run to practice your goal marathon race pace. You can use it to practice your nutrition, all of those sorts of things in the race environment. For those of you who live in Wellington, or maybe you're going to be in Wellington a little bit earlier, if possible, run sections of the course. I wouldn't advise this though for those tuning up on like Friday or Saturday. Don't go out and try to run sections of the course. It'll just probably cause you to become more stressed and expend more energy than it's worth. Course itself is fairly flat, but just getting an idea for the wind and all of that stuff can be quite useful. Mindset routines, practice your warm-up. Warm-up is often a thing that people do not do. And when they just go out for the run, they go out the door and they go for a run. It's a good thing to practice. And this is the other thing that you can do for your half marathon in Orewa, is practice your warm-up and see how much of a difference that can make. You may use the start of the race as your warm-up. As I said, it can be very easy to get carried away, not just now speaking about the Orewa race, but even in the Wellington events. You can get quite carried away at the start. And if you're not warmed up, you will notice your heart rate will rise quite quickly. You will start to become really puffed, and that can verge on kind of panicky breathing. So having a good warm-up, dynamic stretching, all of that sort of thing to prep the muscles for what you're going to do is a good idea. And it's a good idea to not just do it just on races, but on your training runs as well. So we also want to avoid some common mistakes with our final long runs. Don't run the long run too hard unless, as we've talked about, you do have some build runs or some race-specific intervals. These are usually built into your program. If you haven't been doing any speed work in your training, now's not the time to start. Save that for the actual race day. Don't try any new fuel, gear, or shoes. We've said that before. I'll probably say it again. And don't panic if it doesn't feel perfect during these last few long runs. That's normal. You're probably at the time where you're going to feel the most tired. Treat your long run like a simulation, but it's not a test. You want to practice what you are going to do, but the focus is not how well you perform in terms of pacing. This is what you're practicing. You're getting out any mistakes, getting out any things that don't feel right, so that you can implement your best race on the actual day itself. And at the end, I'll talk through one of the bonuses is a dress rehearsal download that you can pop your notes in as you do your final runs to make sure you're ticking off everything that you need to. Let's move on to race morning prep now. So we've done our tapering, we've done our last few long runs. Now we're going to think about what we need to do for race morning. And this preparation doesn't start on race morning. It starts now, or maybe more fully the week of. We want to reduce stress, we want to save energy, and we want to turn up and start strong. So we have here a bit of a pre-race checklist. So you want to think about your wake-up time. You want to allow time to eat, digest, and arrive calmly. What I don't have here, though, is so for those of you who are traveling and not in Wellington, you are going to have to think more about this and plan further in advance than those who live in Wellington, because you'll have to organise accommodation, travel, all of that sort of stuff. Now, this stuff here is some of the stuff that is in a detailed checklist that you can download in the email that'll get sent out after the masterclass. You want to think about your pre-race meal. I've got here, maybe that's the night before, but you might even want to think about a few days out. We don't want anything new now. You want your bathroom routine practice, because, ideally we don't want any surprises on race day or upset stomach. And when we're at the race venue, you want to allow time for queues. Often the toilets right at the entrance to the Henry Stadium are usually most packed, and you can walk a bit further around the stadium and then there's no one and no queues there. You want to lay out your clothes the night before, and you want to, again, think about those layers. What's the weather going to be doing? Do we need a windproof layer? Do we need a waterproof layer? Do we need a thermal, gloves, beanie, that sort of thing? If you're traveling, you're going to want to bring all of this stuff with you just in case. You're going to also want to make sure that you have things like lubricants, hats, sunglasses if you want to wear sunglasses, as well as dry clothes for after. Wear what you've tested again, no new gear on race day. And my little tip on race morning, I suggest actually wearing your race gear with warmer layers over the top, and this will ensure you don't forget anything important. Then pack up the extra items in your bag the night before. So we want the bag packed, we want our bib, timing chip, we want our fuel and hydration put in there, safety pins, or if you're wearing a race belt, sunscreen, maybe wishful thinking, but sometimes you do need it, body glide, anti-chafe, towel, wipes, and post-race snack. They also usually have showers open at the stadium there, so that can be quite handy as well for afterwards. Again, on my checklist that you can download, I have a space for notes so that as you're going through these last weeks, you can add extra things that you might like to have that maybe aren't what someone else will want to have, so won't be on a general checklist. So tailor it for you and make the notes that you need to so that you don't forget anything in the rush of packing or in the excitement of race morning, especially when no matter what, you're probably getting up early. Let's have a little chat now about some course insights. Luckily with this course, it's not really too hard. It's fairly flat. It's mostly out and back. The marathon has 2 laps, but nothing's that tricky. We do want to prepare for all weather. Wellington is great for being windy, sunny, rainy, all the things. So, as I said, bring everything. We want a northerly, but we expect a northerly, but we hope for a southerly. The northerly is usually going to mean probably have quite a strong headwind when you are running home when you're tired. But if we get a southerly, you'll have a headwind, which means you're running into the wind on the way out, but something to push you home. This is where it can be really strategic to learn how to draft, and especially if you're going to run with pacing groups, you can tuck in that group and reduce the impact or the feeling of the wind on you. That way you'll save some energy for later on when you're heading back into the wind. There we go. Use the pacing groups. But if you are running in a pacing group, just give each other a bit of room. Don't run on people's heels so that you're going to trip each other up. Be aware that probably the slower the pacing group, the more inexperienced the runners may be. And there'll be a lot of maybe first time runners and people joining in because they're really trying to reach a milestone. They may not be used to running in a pacing group. So don't run on people's heels. Give yourself a bit of room. The 1 hour 45 pacing group is quite a significant sized group from history, if that's anything to go by. And usually a lot of these pacing groups can fall apart at the halfway mark of a half marathon. So you want to be prepared and know where the pacer is in that group so that you don't start falling back and not realize. The marathon, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have paces. The 10K does have paces. Now, even though it's a flat, it's an easy course, it's out and back, it is quite windy. Some of the new course changes are to do with the new cycleways that have been built around the waterfront. So you're going to be running on those rather than the road, as opposed to previous years where there's been a lot more running on the road. There'll still be the twisty corners, the winding around and in and out of the bay. So if you can try to stick to racing lines and the shortest possible point between A and B, you won't end up running any extra. But you may not have any option depending on where people are, how many people are around you, and other people coming back and from, say, like the marathon, which starts earlier than the half marathon will start. And then also you'll get mixed up with the 10Kers as well in the end parts of your races. The other point to note about the course is with the aid stations. As I said, they're roughly every 5Ks. The Evans Bay aid station will be a little bit different because of running on the cycleways. There won't be the cut through the car park. But again, that's only really minor stuff there. Right. There is a little hill at the end, and it seems quite ridiculous for those of you who know the stadium to think of it as a hill, but it really does have an impact on you after you've especially done the marathon, the half marathon. You come back, and all of a sudden, you've gone from running fairly flat to having to run on an incline. And then when you get to the top, there's still about another 200 meters to the finish line. So be prepared for that. Know it's coming, dig in, and of course, smile for the finish line photo. Okay, race day fuel and nutrition. We've talked a little bit about this before, but stay topped up. Eat high carb, low fiber breakfast 2 to 3 hours before the race. This will be dependent on how well you're digesting, how easily you get a stitch. For me, I like more the 3 hour mark because I do take a while to digest, or I just get a stitch really easily. These are the things you're going to want to practice to know before race morning. And then you want to add a small snack or a gel 15, 30 minutes before the start if needed. And that would probably be more for the half marathoners, the marathoners, or those who are going to be out there for quite a while. During the race, these are just some rough guidelines: 30 to 60 carbs per hour, mix of gels, chews, drink mix, bananas, muesli bars, whatever works for you. But again, just because I've said 30 to 60, don't just go and be like, oh, I should have 60. You need to build up to those marks, and some people do not like eating that much per hour. Timing also matters. So plan when you're going to take your fuel on. You can do this based on time or based on the kilometer markers. I like, for example, basing it on the aid stations because then I don't have to carry water. So I might run, quickly have a gel as I'm approaching the aid station, or quickly have a muesli bar or something like that. And then I can have a bit of a drink to wash it down. When you take gels, you're always going to want to have some water to wash it down with, because gels are highly concentrated sugar mixes. And the reason why they can upset your stomach is because of the high concentration. So that's why you usually want to water it down. Hydration strategy. So we want to drink to a plan, not just to thirst. It is a winter event, and so that does require a different plan from a summer event. We do want to stay well hydrated. We want to use the aid stations to sip on water or electrolyte drink. And as I said, it's not necessarily going to be hot, but if it's hot or windy or you're a real salty sweater, you're probably going to want more electrolytes to replace what you are sweating out. Again, practice this, and this is where using other events, using your long runs to practice a bit of race intensity so that you feel how hard it is or feel how you get thirsty. Sometimes when you're running easy, you won't really feel the need to do some of this stuff, or you'll just do it, drink and eat when you're done. If that's how you're going to approach the event, then that's fine. But if you're going to approach the event with wanting to run faster and run with more intensity, you will find that you will need to fuel it a little bit more than just running it easy. Test your plan. Practice, practice, practice. Use your final long runs to test these things. What we want to avoid, some common mistakes I see happen, is people skipping breakfast or waiting too long to fuel. If you feel hungry or feel thirsty, then that usually means it's too late. You don't want to try new gels, like I said. Over drinking is just as bad as not drinking at all. And we want to remember that hydration equals performance and safety. We don't want to get dehydrated. It ruins, us for days, can ruin our experience of the event. But likewise, you don't need to guzzle a whole lot of water down in one go. That's why sipping at the aid stations can be quite helpful instead of trying to just down a whole bunch of water all in one go. If you have trouble remembering to drink or eat, it's really easy to do in race day with the atmosphere and all the excitement. So set a reminder on your watch, set a little alarm to go off every, so often, so that you don't forget it. Okay, so managing nerves and mindset. So again, another thing that's going to be very different and very individual, but we do want to train our brain, especially for those endurance events. We want to visualize success. I've talked a little bit about this already, but picturing yourself on race day, running strong, handling the tough parts of the course, crossing the finish line. The more clearly you can see it, the more ready your brain is going to feel, and the more ready you are going to be to push yourself through that hard stuff. A mantra can be really motivating. Find something that works for you. Strong and steady. I've got this, one step at a time. My personal favorite is the time is meow, victory is yours. It makes a lot more sense when I have a visual of cats, and my husband holding up those signs. But something that you attach to, that you then focus on, that mantra is what you want. Don't just pick something because it sounds like it should be a good one if it's not going to actually motivate you to do anything with it. The other thing is expect discomfort. If you're going for a performance, a time-based thing, it's not going to be easy. It's normal for things to feel hard, and especially in the second half of the race. On the Wellington course, we've already mentioned, you'll probably have a headwind, or you could find yourself running alone. Stay calm, breathe, and stick to your plan. One thing you can do when it gets hard is smile. This has actually been proven to help reduce your perception of pain, so you'll run better. It also will help you to stay relaxed, especially in the shoulders, and not tensed up and waste energy where you don't need it. I'll also now just go through some cycle savvy tips for women. So apologies to any men who are on here, but you can tell your female friends and partners some of these tips as well. So plan for your cycle so that you can support your body and run at your best no matter where you actually are. So if your period falls on race day, it's not the end of the world. Track your cycle so it doesn't surprise you. Again, we want to plan for things. Choose gear that makes you feel confident and comfortable to run in. Really important. You also want to plan for your sanitary product logistics. Pads aren't ideal for running, and you've probably worked that out by now. Tampons and menstrual cups are a lot better and usually last a lot longer, so you don't have to worry about inconvenient changes. But you also may want to consider toilet timing around the start line and if you need to do any changes through the course. So know where those toilets are and whether you're going to need to use them, what you're going to need to carry with you. Plan for it like anything else. Your follicular phase is day 1 of your bleed to roughly day 14. So after you get and I've said after you get your period here because some women can feel a bit off when they have their period, especially if they're heavy bleeders. So for most women, once your period is over, you feel usually your strongest, sharpest, and up for a challenge. So this is a really good time to be doing a race. Trust your body. You can be a great time to race hard, and you'll usually recover a bit better as well. If you don't get any issues with having your period, then having your period is also the same can be true. It's your low hormonal phase, so there's lots of benefits to running in that phase. Oh, thanks, Lizzie. Yeah, period undies are another good type of thing, but again, yeah, trial and error. Find the ones that suit you because they are usually going to be a little bit thicker than normal underwear, and that's when you can get the risk of chafing. So in your late luteal phase, and that's usually around the week before you start your period, your day 1 of your bleed, that's normally when you have your PMS symptoms, your premenstrual symptoms. So most people might notice some fatigue, some bloating, dips in mood. You might also notice some more cravings, and that's why you may want certain foods around that time or feel like you eat more. Support yourself with anti-inflammatory foods like salmon, walnuts, berries. You usually have a little bit more inflammation around this time, which can be why you can feel a bit sore, a bit slower to recover. That's where you can also use supplements like magnesium or zinc and low dose aspirin, again, to dampen the inflammatory response. Magnesium and zinc, those minerals are also used by the body a bit more in this phase of the cycle. More rest, more hydration in the days leading up to it as well. So if you track your period, you'll at least know if you're going to be in this phase and if you have to maybe start taking a little bit of low dose aspirin or maybe having some salmon for dinner in those days leading up to it to help you feel just a bit better. Now, if you're a mum and you're currently breastfeeding, you will need to fuel more frequently because like you're eating for 2 when you're breastfeeding, you're also now training, so your energy demands are really high. Breastfeeding makes you thirsty and you're training as well on top of that, so make sure you are drinking enough, staying on top of your hydration needs. Express ahead of the time so that you don't have full breasts to run in because that's not comfortable, and make sure you really do have a good high support bra, maybe 2 bras. Again, test it in training if it's going to work. Now we will talk a little bit about post-race recovery. Some of these things, though, will also apply to the long runs in these last few weeks that we're doing as well in the taper. For the race, we want to refuel ASAP. We want to eat carb and we want to eat a protein snack, ideally as soon as we can after finishing. And we want to keep sipping on water and electrolytes throughout the day. And that will just help with those feelings of soreness, the inflammation that's going to come from doing something hard or outside of our comfort zone. Walking helps. Gentle movement will help. It helps with that DOMS, that sore muscle feeling. Light stretching or mobility for the same reason can also help, but unless you're used to it, it would skip deep stretching or foam rolling. Maybe wait a day or so before doing that. You also want to prioritize hygiene. So get out of sweaty clothes and shower when you can. If chafing has occurred, clean and soothe it. So also if it's a rainy day, you don't get a cold from getting wet and being in cold weather, but if you stay in those cold, wet clothes, that can be when your immune system has to work a bit harder. And when you're already working hard in training, we don't want to have to force the immune system to work harder than it needs to. Rest. This is really important from now on. Aim for early nights, quality sleep, as well as quantity. Your body is rebuilding. The more you run, the more sleep you need in order to recover before your next session, your next hard session. So we will talk a little bit about the bonuses now, and then we'll go through a wrap up of what we have gone through today. Now can be a great time as well to pop any questions in the chat, and then I'll come to them again at after we do the wrap up. Expect an email to come out tonight, which will have a replay of this masterclass and a link to go and download the bonuses, which include a copy of my nutrition cheat sheet. It has meal and snack ideas, what to eat ideas for what to eat during a run, before a run, after a run, and also my race day dress rehearsal checklist. So that's something you can use in these last few weeks to plan out your long runs, note down what worked, what didn't work, and what you need to change or do differently. Or just remember, this is what I need to do on race day because this worked really well. It will also have the things that we talked about, like writing down your timings for race morning, when to have breakfast, when to leave for the event, all of that sort of thing. As I mentioned at the start, I am also a running and triathlon coach, and I do tailored coaching plans, as well as some of you may be on some of my free or pre-done plans that I've been selling as part of the preparation for the Wellington Marathon event. Now, having a coach can really make a difference. Google can't coach you back from burnout. AI can't always tell you when you're burning out, when you should rest, when you should push harder. So I do personalized plans for you and give you that accountability to stay disciplined even when your motivation may wane. It's also really helpful to have an objective set of eyes over things. And basically, I can take that energy that you might spend on worrying about whether you're doing things right, wrong, overthinking training, and just have the confidence that you're doing the right training at the right time. As I said, one of my specialities is female training and working with women and their menstrual cycles, working with their symptoms, working with menopause, so that they're training properly and to their best that they can. I have 12-week Race Smart programs, and this is basically something that you can do for a minimum of 12 weeks to lead into an event, can help you reach a new PB or just feel strong again. I do structured 4-week blocks through training peaks, and depending on what type of coaching level you're after, you'll get a certain amount of weekly support and accountability. I can also give you guidance on nutrition, recovery, and hormones, and also join in a community to help keep you motivated. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in talking about, obviously it's a bit too late to start a training program for the Wellington Marathon if you haven't already. But for your next event, I'd love to be able to help you. As I said at the start, you can book in a free 15-minute call to talk about your next event, to talk about training for the Wellington event and some more tailored things for what we have been talking about tonight and how they might apply to you. And then we can talk a little bit more about my coaching options as well. So take a screenshot or maybe quickly scan that there. There will be a link in the email that will come out later if you still want to have a bit of a think about it. These are some of the people and providers that I've worked with currently and in the past. And here is a couple of testimonials from some of my clients. I trained Helena for the Iron Māori, and she took 30 minutes off her time after signing me up as her coach. And I also worked with Jenny here to help her basically train with her cycle and her hormones a bit better. And we had great success with basically recalibrating her heart rate and getting her to be able to train in the appropriate zones without always training too hard all the time. So, a recap of what we have talked about today. Tapering is really powerful. We want to reduce the load, and that means reducing the volume, but keeping in intensity. You have a little bit more rest, and then that will give you a stronger performance. Practice everything now. Hopefully you already have been, but if you've not, you've still got a few more weeks. Practice the gear you're going to run in, race day breakfast, fueling, all of that sort of stuff. See the checklist that I'll email out later tonight. Plan your race day logistics. Know the course, know the timings and the aid stations. Fuel and hydrate to a plan. The longer you are out there, the more you're going to need. Have a think about some of the things we talked about here about that 30 to 60 carbs, if that's something that's right for you. What's on the aid station versus what you need to carry. And remember, for those marathoners, there's some special rules about your personal aid stations and things that you can leave. For women, plan for your cycle. Track where your period and your cycles fall so that you can implement some of those strategies to help whatever phase you are in to still run your best. Remember, mindset matters. So visualize, stay positive, but think through solutions to any problems or obstacles that you may face rather than just worrying about them happening. Break the race down into chunks. Stay in the moment. Try not to think too far ahead. There's that good saying, you can only worry about what you can control and don't worry about what you can't control. Finally, if anyone wants to reach out, here are my contact details. If you have any questions, as I said, you can book a call or feel free to email or reach out. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. And finally, just a big thank you for those who joined live to watch. I don't think we have any new questions. Thank you for those questions that we did get. I hope I answered everything. And as I said, there will be an email coming out later. I will also be at the expo and registration on Saturday. So come say hi. And if you've got any last minute questions, feel free to ask then as well. Thanks, Lizzie. Glad you found it useful. I'll stop the record now and yeah, have a great evening, everyone.